Hey guys, welcome back to Right on MMA. My name's Connor. Today we're going to be going over some fundamentals, starting with stance. And I think you'll find my view on stance kind of interesting because it's not exactly what a lot of other coaches are talking about. Anyways, if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. And let's get into it. So first off, getting into the specifics of the stance, for me, we need four things to apply. And I've mentioned this in past videos, but it also applies to stance. It's the consistency, the efficiency, the subtlety, and the versatility. If you can apply those four concepts to your stance, then it is fine in my books. So I don't really care if you keep your hands low. I don't care necessarily where your foot position is, as long as you can apply, again, the consistency of that stance. Is that stance efficient? Can you maintain subtlety in that stance? And is it versatile? There's some rules that we can't really break if we're going to be maintaining those things, i.e., crossing our feet. I can't be standing like this because I can't be consistent in anything fighting somebody with this sideways, awkward stance. So in general, if you can't apply those four concepts, then your stance isn't going to be the best version. So getting into specifics, and I'll just kind of describe my stance, but as we go through it, you can sort of create your own. For me, I'm right-handed, so I prefer my power hand in the back, but that's not a hard rule. Right-handed people can still fight southpaw, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we see a lot of the fighters at the top level, right? GSP, Dustin Poirier, Robbie Lawler, they were all right-handed individuals who led with their power in front. So if you want to be a right-handed fighter and fight from southpaw, or vice versa, a left-handed fighter and continue to fight orthodox, all the power to you. But just make sure that you can keep consistency in that stance. It's not good for someone who's still trying to figure out how they want to fight to constantly be switching their stance. When I first started in martial arts, I was only southpaw. I was committed to being southpaw because I wanted my power hand in the front. I don't know why. I was young, but that's really what I wanted to do. And I stayed consistent with it, and I was always comfortable in that stance. It didn't make a difference in the long run. I didn't have great coaching, but regardless, I was comfortable standing and fighting from that stance, no matter who I was up against. Okay, so for taking our foot position, right, you stand square and feel comfortable just standing on your own 2 feet with your hands by your side, and I sort of just let the foot that I want in the back to lazily fall behind me. So I already have a really established stance, so it falls behind me, and this is just about where I am. Right? I'm slightly bladed, I'm not too wide open, but I still have strength and balance in my stance. My weight is even between my feet, and I feel my toes against the mat. Right? You don't want to be heavy in your heels when you're moving. You want to kind of push the balls of your feet into the mat, as if you're trying to squish a bug. You have a little bend to your knees. So if I'm fighting in kickboxing, boxing, MMA, I usually don't want my hips square. And that term basically means that our hips are going to be an even distance from our opponent. Bladed stance would mean that one hip is leading the other. So my left hip is in front, my right hip is in back because I'm fighting from orthodox. For shoulder position, my shoulders basically rest right over top of my hips. And that's where I want to be. I don't really want to be twisted and sort of out of place like this, but instead, where my hips go, right, my shoulders more or less follow with them. For hand position now, and this is another thing that a lot of other coaches have like very hard rules on, right? You always need to keep your hands by your chin. You always need to keep your hands by your forehead. I went to a boxing gym not too long ago, and I have a lot of experience, and I'm shadow boxing, and the coach comes up to me and says, no, 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 no. You can never hold your hands like this. You need to hold them here. And okay, I'm not necessarily a boxer. I'm an MMA fighter who teaches striking, but regardless, you're telling me that every boxer on the planet holds their hands like this. No, it's just not true, right? You see some of the best fighters in the planet hold all kinds of different hand positions with some consistent rules, but the hand position is all over the place. There's no consistency in where people keep their hands. From fighter to fighter, it always changes. So for me, right, I sort of hold my right hand close to my jaw and my left hand a little bit more out in front of me. Something like this. This is usually where I'm doing my fighting from. And I'm consistent in that stance, so I'll build efficiency in it, right? If I'm constantly changing my hand position, then I'm not going to be as consistent in the finish of my strikes, in the finish of my defenses. I won't constantly be ready for whatever is thrown at me or whatever I want to throw out. If you're not consistent in your hand position, and this is something that I've changed in a few, let's say, Muay Thai fighters, right? Not to dog them, but they have sort of this rhythm to their movement. A lot of the time, they hold their hands up high and they bounce with their hands. In general, that's not really a good habit to have, right? To be constantly moving your hands. Because what ends up happening is that you build patterns of dropping the hands, then throwing them, right? You're going to move your hands, but usually throw from the same place every time. So it becomes more predictable. So I keep my hands in steady, consistent position wherever that is. I've even trained some guys to fight like this with their hands completely down because their stance, their style is more focused on movement and they can sort of rely on that. And that again goes back into what styles you're trying to emulate. If you want to be a movement-based fighter, right, where you do a lot of soft blocking, or rather what I describe as blocking where you take zero impact, then you can play with your hands down a lot more. The best strikers on the planet all seem to do it. They all fight with their hands down here a lot of the time in the context of MMA, right? Those really, really clean kickboxers like Israel Adesanya or Alex Pereira. Those guys usually fight with their hands, right? A little bit more dynamically and low. But there's one thing that they all have in common. None of them have their elbows off of their body, right? You're not doing your striking ever from your elbows away from yourself or your elbows behind your body. So my elbows are in front or in line with my body, and I can play with this hand position. Right? Me, I even rest my elbows against my side more or less and roll my hands up. So again, that is my stance, and I'm consistent in it. If you're consistent, then the rest is going to be easy, and you'll build those good patterns. Just don't get in the weird, like YouTube style kickboxer. Ironic, I'm teaching this on YouTube, but the YouTube style kickboxer that's always moving like this, because those guys are actually the easiest in the world to predict. They are so easy to follow and just pick at in every little hole that they open up. A good fighter will recognize the patterns that you're creating because you think you're being, all unique and, sort of hard to read and doing all these funky, right, very special movements that are unique to you. But I tell you what, in at least 2 minutes into the first round, they will know every single pattern that you put out. They'll know when you're going to switch your feet. They know when you're going to cross your feet. They know when you're going to drop your hands. They'll know when you're going to throw your strikes, and they will just pick at you. They'll be relaxed, land every single strike that they want to land, and then you'll get more frustrated and end up being more erratic. But if you're consistent in your stance and you have tight, subtle, consistent, efficient, versatile movement, then you're going to kick ass. Okay, just to summarize, all right, we're not going to keep our feet together. We're going to keep that space in between our legs. We don't want to feel like we're standing on a tightrope, right? I'm open. I want to be either square to my opponent or bladed, but I'm going to be consistent in it. All right, my shoulders are right over top of my hips. My elbows are not off of my body, but in, and they're rolled up to my chin. And that's where I am, right? Hand position, again, wherever you're comfortable with, just be consistent in it, right? Chin down and look through your eyebrows at your opponent. Okay, guys, thanks for watching the video. Hopefully you got something out of this. Leave a comment on the video if you have your own style of stance, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. I really like hearing all of it. But anyways, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.